The history of racing in Watkins Glen is long and colorful. It's a story of one man's desire to race his MG on the streets and county roads surrounding the small village and the obstacles he had to overcome to make that dream a reality. What happened on the streets here October 2nd, 1948, forever changed the face of racing in the United States. And 75 years later, we are still eternally grateful to the drive and vision of Cameron Argetsing. But there is another story, certainly not as well known as that of racing, but one that forever changed a segment of the automobile industry. And that also happened on the small village of Watkins Glen. The following are excerpts from a document titled The Corvette Story, written by Nick Ferboni, former owner of Glen Chevrolet here in Watkins Glen, and on file at the Research Center. In July 1951, Mr. Ferboni received a letter from Harley J. Earl, chief stylist of General Motors, an automotive visionary, and the man who was the team leader of the largest industrial company in the world based on design and technology. Earl was planning on coming to Watkins Glen for the sports car races in 1951, accompanied by a GM engineer and photographer. He would be driving a radical new show car, the LeSabre. He needed a place to store it, and what better place than Glen Chevrolet? The LeSabre was one of the most influential concept cars of the 1950s. It had aircraft-inspired design elements such as the wraparound windshield and tail fins, which became commonplace on cars designed during that decade. It had a body made of aluminum, magnesium, and fiberglass, and was powered by a supercharged 215 cubic inch aluminum block V8, able to run on gasoline or methanol. The car was also featured GM's first rear-mounted automatic transmission. Other advances included a 12-volt electrical system instead of the usual 6-volt used at the time, heated seats, electric headlights which were concealed behind the center jet intake, a water sensor to activate the power top, and electric lifting jacks integrated into the chassis to aid in tire changes. It was GM's first use of the LeSabre name, which would later be adopted by Buick. And like all of Earl's cars, it was built to be roadworthy and instead became Earl's daily driver for a period of 2 years after he finished it on the show circuit. The car and the man were both hugely popular in the village that weekend. Mr. Ferboni states, "This was the first time I had met Harley Earl, and he impressed me very much. He had an outstanding personality, so easy to talk to, that he made you feel as though you had known him for a long time." Ferboni took Earl to the Townhouse Hotel Grog Shop, which was a haven for race car enthusiasts. Earl's stature and relaxed personality made him popular with everyone he met. They were also hosted by Warren Clute Jr. and his wife, and the night before the race, they went to the Argetsinger home where he met more members of the racing community. So here we see the car coming outside Glen Chevrolet. These are several photos of the car on Franklin Street in Watkins Glen. All the personalities lined up behind the car. Very impressive piece. Now, the car did not get actually universal acclaim. Some of the car's detractors actually just claimed the car was just simply too big. And we'll see maybe where this leads into the story a little bit later on. Here's Mr. Earl at the home of Warren Clute Jr. and his wife. This is one of the more iconic photos we have in our collection. This shows the car pictured in front of a house called Idlewild, which was actually the home of Warren Clute Sr. and his family. Now, unfortunately, we've never been able to determine who actually was driving the car when this picture was taken, but I just love this picture. This is another event where you see Mr. Earl on the left, Warren Clute Jr. in the middle, gentleman named Marshall Lewis, who was the mechanic and actually a racer himself during that era. Marshall was the mechanic for Jim Kimberly, and Jim Kimberly, the race drivers, standing on the right. So Mr. Earl made the rounds that weekend in Watkins Glen, met lots of different people, and universally impressed everyone. The day before the race, arrangements were made to have Earl lead the Concours d'Elegance parade in the LeSabre from the courthouse to 4th Street. The parade consisted of foreign sports and racing cars, and Earl was greatly surprised by the enthusiastic reaction the cars received from the crowd, mentioning on more than one occasion that the American automobile industry was certainly lacking a sports car similar to the European models that he saw. On the day of the race itself, Fraboni and Earl watched the race from the porch of Fraboni's friends, the Woodwards, which was just a short distance down from the start-finish line. Once again, Earl was amazed at the great amount of enthusiasm of fans. He was amazed at the turnout of fans. Crowd estimates for 1951 were somewhere in the neighborhood of 150,000 people in the small village of Watkins Glen. And the extent of their enthusiasm for all of these foreign cars. On more than one occasion, again, he remarked that America was certainly missing these types of cars. And Nick writes in his piece that although he never said it at the time, he certainly thought it gave him the idea of designing one. His inner wheels were turning, as Nick says. Just to give you an idea what the 51 race looked like, well, here's one more shot of this is Nick Fraboni being driven by the famous opera singer at the time, James Melton. Pretty impressive looking machine. So for those who wondered what those races looked like, they were still running through the streets in 1951. So this is a picture of the starting line of the Grand Prix. You see Briggs Cunningham outside in the number 53 Cunningham, and then inside is the number 3 George Harris III car. There were only 3 races run in 1951. The Seneca Cup was 8 laps. The Queen Catherine Cup was also 8 laps, and the featured race itself, the Grand Prix, was 15 laps. Now that may not sound like a lot of laps, but keep in mind they were still running on the 6.6 mile road course. The start-finish line was literally right in front of the courthouse, and it ran a big circle around the state park. There was starting positions for each race were determined by a drawing from a hat. There was actually no qualifying procedures at that time. Here we see the cars heading up Route 329 after having just turned off Franklin Street. This is another Cunningham. It's just navigated the last corner and it's heading back to the start-finish line. Again, notice the throngs of people on either side of the street. This is an interesting gentleman called Otto Linton driving a Seata. Mr. Linton was one of the first competitors in the inaugural 1948 race here, and then he raced every year up to the early 1960s. He was the last of the 1948 competitors to actually pass away in 2018, and he was almost 101 years of age at that point. Here we're crossing the famous Stone Bridge during the Seneca Cup race. And finally, we have Phil Walters driving the Cunningham number 55, winning the Grand Prix at an average speed of 77.65 miles per hour. Several days after Mr. Earl left, Nick received a very nice thank you letter, and the friendship between the two gentlemen was solidified. In the summer of 1953, when Nick learned that Chevrolet was actually building the Corvette, he reached out to the Buffalo Zone office about having a car in Watkins Glen. He was told that only 4 had been made up to that point, and none had been allocated to a small Chevy dealership in a rural upstate New York village. While the Buffalo Zone office were not helpful, they did authorize him to deal directly with Chevrolet Promotions Department in Detroit. Convinced that the idea for the car had been inspired by Harley's visit in 1951, Fraboni flew to Detroit, where he met with the promotion staff. Now, the promotion staff were not did not really know much about Watkins Glen, and they were not really, did not have many ideas about Earl's visit 2 years earlier. But with the same tenacity that Cameron Argetsinger showed in 1948, Nick went directly to Earl's office in the GM building. Mr. Earl was not there at the time, but the administrative assistant who had actually accompanied him during that memorable 1951 weekend remembered him. A call was made to promotions that Harley Earl's office had approved, releasing a Corvette to Watkins Glen Chevrolet, Inc. This is showing a picture of the car at the New York Autorama during its inaugural presentation in 1953. The car arrived by van a few days prior to the 1953 race, and like the LeSabre 2 years earlier, was a great crowd, drew a great crowd to the dealership. Also like the LeSabre, it also was at the head of the Concours d'Elegance parade a day prior to the race itself. Here we have some shots of the Corvette leading the Concours d'Elegance parade. This is an article from the Elmira Star-Gazette, kind of after the fact. We believe this is from the early 90s, but it basically is telling the story of how the car was originated here. So in case you might be thinking that this whole story is just urban, or more appropriately rural legend, there is an actual recording that Harley Earl made with Detroit journalist Stanley Brams in 1954, where he states, "I ran the LeSabre as part of a sports car race in Watkins Glen, and that's where I got the idea for the Corvette." So while I don't think GM has ever actually come out with a memo stating that, there is documented proof that Harley got the inspiration for the Corvette when he was here in 1951. Since the arrival of the Corvette, the car has been an integral part of the racing scene at the Glen. A couple photos here from 1955 competition. They would have been running on the county road circuit in 1955. Another car hustling to stay ahead of the E-Jaguar at that point. This is Dr. Dick Thompson, the racing dentist, driving a very unique Corvette SS race car from 1960. Tony DiLorenzo, one of the most notable Corvette drivers from 1967. The Corvette has been used in the driver parades for the Grand Prix here. And specifically, this is 1970. Some gentleman named Fittipaldi and another long-haired gentleman named Stewart, both who went on to do great things in automobile racing. This is Darren Brassfield in the 1984 Trans Am. One of the more iconic Hendrick Motorsports Corvette GTP cars in the 1988 Camel Continental. Terrific car. Our friend Joe Salins in the 2008 Rolex race. And finally, this is the 2016 IMSA, where we had the Corvette GTP cars. So all of this leads up to the brand new Corvette E-Ray, yet to be built, but it will be going into manufacture a little bit later this summer. And this will be the center's sweepstakes car for this year. This is the first hybrid Corvette ever made. It's the fastest Corvette on the market, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, 495 horsepower mid-engine motor, and 160 horsepower electric motor in the front, four-wheel drive. Spectacular car. We anticipate having ours very shortly after the build actually begins. Now, what this leads up to, this whole history of the Corvette, is actually leading up to two very special events that we're going to have in Watkins Glen. One upcoming here just in a couple weeks. It's the first annual Corvette Festival. On Saturday, May 20th, there'll be a large Corvette show down at Clute Park. At 6 p.m., the legacy of Harley J. Earl keynote address, which will be given by Richard Earl, grandson and historian of Mr. Earl. And then on Sunday, May 21st, we'll show the film 25 Years at Speed, the Watkins Glen story at the Glen Theater at noon. And then Corvettes, I believe we have 150 of them signed up, will be given an escorted tour of the original street circuit. Should be a spectacular weekend. And that will be leading up to our vintage weekend, which is September 8th through the 10th. On Friday, September 8th, will be the 30th annual Watkins Glen Grand Prix Festival. The festival itself is a day-long celebration and honoring of the early days of racing through the village. Corvette, of course, will be the featured marque for this year. There will be a special display of Corvette race cars from different eras, tying together the 75 years of racing at the Glen and the fact that the Corvette has been such an integral part of that history for so many years. And for those who are watching this or listening to this, I am still in need of Corvette race cars. So if you know someone who has a race car that might not actually be racing that weekend here, but would love to put it on display, we'll feature them in a very prominent display downtown for the Friday Festival, and then at WGI for the Hilliard US Grand Prix Vintage Weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So let me know if anybody has a Corvette race car out there that they'd like to display that weekend. That weekend is simply the greatest weekend of the year in Watkins Glen. The Friday event downtown is by far the coolest day of the year here. And the fact that we'll be honoring 75 years of racing, 70 years of the Corvette, and it'll be the 30th annual Watkins Glen Vintage Festival, all tied up into one day, is very, very special. So Vintage Weekend at the Glen, don't miss it.